What's up, y'all? LTJ Reads is here. This is Throwing Light, and if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. Episode 106. I am thrilled to have your current international Mr. Leather, Rene Hebert, here on Throwing Light. Coming
Hi.
off of a win, you're still on fire. You're still, can see that light. Maybe it's your camera lighting, but you are radiant. You have a lot of light behind you.
Well, I mean, I live in Palm Springs, so it's
So,
very.
so are you Cajun?
I am not. I am Acadian, which we can go into the whole history. There's a same root ancestry there, so around the way I'm Cajun, but not really, if
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I've lived in Lafayette. I know a lot of A Bears, and so
Hmm.
it was just like that was my first thing. So yeah, so I'm so glad to have you on here. In terms of just kind of like spreading your message out there. Would you go ahead and tell us a little bit about how you first got involved in the leather community and bootblacking?
Sure. So I first got started in the leather community. I always knew that I was kinky. I always knew that I had some non-vanilla interests and had no idea how to explore that. And I got very lucky. I ended up connecting with this one guy on Recon in my very early 20s. I was 21, 22. And he kind of started the ball rolling as far as what to look into for the leather community and started telling me about, these are books that you might want to read. These are people that you might want to look into. And he started taking me to my first like leather events. Now, this was in Western Canada, in Alberta. There is a leather scene there, but it's not as vibrant as other places. It's not um, as full as some other places. So it wasn't like we could go to the leather bar. We went to one bar that some leather guys hung out sometimes,
Mhm.
like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that kind of got me started. I met the right person at the right time that kind of like put me on the right path to learning about healthy leather and BDSM stuff.
Mhm.
Um, as far as boot blacking, I remember that was November 2010, and the main reason I remember that is because it was the first time I ran for a leather title. That the head judge for that contest was that year's International Community Boot Black, and watching them work is really what clicked me into, oh, this is something that I really want to learn. And um, so I just kind of went from there and found resources online and found community online that helped me figure out what that even was.
Mhm. So how did you? So what got you to Palm Springs, and how was your development there?
Um, so I'm currently in a relationship with my daddy, who I've been with for it'll be 12 years in December. He and I met through so it's kind of like a multi-tiered poly situation. I met him through his dom years ago. And so we were doing the long distance thing, and after about 3, 4 years, we kind of went, we need to figure out how to connect this a little bit more physical long term. So we looked into me moving down from Canada, and I actually I moved down here on a student visa. I got my bachelor's degree, moved on to a work visa from there, but that's how I got to Palm Springs was I was in a relationship with someone that we wanted to make it more like long-term, serious in person. And okay, how do we go about doing that? And in the process, I got my education, which is good.
So how did you learn that you were poly?
Um, it just always kind of clicked.
Mhm.
Um, like I've tried monogamous relationships and it never um like it always felt like there were pieces missing. As ideal of a situation as it was with the person that I was with, it was always like, well, it feels like something's missing and it feels like it's not quite clicking and it's not a situation that I'm really comfortable with, or it's not a situation that I really feel like I'm exploring as much as I would like to feel fulfillment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of, support? Do you have a lot of friends that are poly?
Yeah. I I would say the majority of my friends are.
Hmm.
Um, even the friends that I have that are more on like the straight vanilla end of the spectrum, even them, it's like they'll have one guy with like someone they consider their primary and then like a girlfriend on the side or a boyfriend on the side or whatever. And it's typically all done above board. Like I'm not saying it's like a side piece situation, but most of the people that I know, yeah, it's definitely more of like a very poly situation, but it's done in a very healthy way, which is good.
And I'm curious. So and let me jump on that. You said healthy. So
Hmm.
let's talk about that. What is a healthy way to have a poly relationship? What does that mean exactly?
Communicate.
Communication. I hear that
It,
a lot.
it's
No, I hear that a lot.
it genuinely comes down to like communicating when something comes up, if you have a need that's not being addressed, if um, there's something that you want to explore, when issues of jealousy come up, because it is an emotion that we all feel. So, okay, that's usually a symptom, not a cause. So what is causing that to come up, you know? So yeah, a lot of it is just it comes down to communication.
So, okay, so in terms of, your interests, you did bootblacking and things like that. What motivated you to want to compete for another title and go to International Mr. Leather? Like at this point, like what was your motivation?
So I would say competing for a title in general versus competing for IML are actually two different things that happened to align. Um, because essentially before IML, my feeder title going into IML was Mr. Palm Springs Leather. And before that, for about 4 years, I was the boot black at the barracks before it closed. It closed August 4th of last year, so we're coming up on the anniversary. Um, and the Palm Springs community is one that I have grown very attached to, that I've really come to feel is home for me. Um, it's there's a lot of people here that I've really connected with, and just the community here is so diverse in some amazing ways, and I've really come to call it home. So for me, running for Mr. Palm Springs Leather just kind of made sense because it lined up with a bunch of my interests, my values, as well as helping the community in any way that I could. Now, I recognize that being a title holder isn't required to do good work in your community, but I also recognize that it's a platform that comes with a certain amount of visibility and a certain boost. So in my mind, I feel like a title can be used as a tool or as a vehicle to help further whatever good work that you do. Um, and I also recognize that, like, as a cis white guy, I have some privilege that I can leverage to help better my community that way as well, and helps shed some light on, um, some causes with regards to the trans community, or right now, especially some causes with not just the trans community, but with the POC community and with the Black community. So helping out where I can. So for me, running for Mr. Palm Springs Leather was like, okay, this feels like a good spot for me as far as advocacy, as far as being able to help, and as far as being able to give back to the community that took me in. Um, the IML thing, I'm a theater kid. Like I there's a certain amount of me that likes being on stage and likes the the pageantry and all this stuff. I have a history with the Imperial Court, with the Imperial Drag Court. So like that kind of world just resonates with me. And IML is something that I have daydreamed about just being on that stage for probably 15 years. So it just kind of lined up where it's like, okay, well, I did the Mr. Palm Springs thing. IML just sounds like it would be fun, stressful, but it just kind of lined up. And that on top of everything else is it's an even bigger platform that I can use to help um, build community in some way and just help spread love and spread empathy and just spread more of what I would like to see more of in the community. And I think I've done that at least a little bit so far, maybe.
I think you're doing a lot. I think you're doing great just by being, represented a lot for the community. You're boot black, and I want to go back to you being a theater kid and how
Mhm.
that has applied and been used. So, because I find it so great to learn people's backgrounds and what they use to kind of position themselves as their authentic selves in the community. So, you said you were a theater. Like, how involved in theater were you?
Um, so I never got super involved in um it was an on again, off again thing, and a lot of it is when I was younger, I didn't have many opportunities to really dive in. Like if we go back to high school, I didn't realize my high school had a theater program until senior year because it was one of those like extracurriculars that was buried. You had to really look for it. Junior high, I remember my junior high didn't have a theater program, that kind of thing. But if we go back to elementary school, I was involved in some theater groups back then, like little tiny kid theater, and I probably tortured my parents with the shows that they had to go to. I did a lot of musical stuff, usually choir, that kind of thing. And I always really enjoyed theater as an art form. And then when I was in through my 20s, um, I joined a local musical theater group that was all volunteer, and it was like part school, part putting on a big production show. I love going to theater and that kind of stuff. So as an art form and as a performance style, it's something that's always clicked. Um, and then again, through my 20s, I mean, I joined the Imperial Court and I got to be involved in probably more drag shows than it would be healthy for most people. But I had a lot of fun doing it. So,
I think drag is, you have a lot of drag. So I want to go back to connect that for everybody, how you took your theater background and you applied that to the IMO stage.
um, so okay. There is definitely some aspects of performance that apply to running for IML. Now we can sit here and debate whether or not it's a pageant. I feel like that's something that people have differing opinions on as far as like what you define as a pageant, whatever. Setting that aside, you have the pecs and personality or physique and stage presence portion, which is entirely taking whatever stage fright you might have and being like, no, we're going to put a pause on that because we need to be sexy and playful on stage. And no, that is theater. That there's an element of that that's like, no, I need to turn it on and I need to perform now. Whatever that looks like for you, whatever narrative you're trying to portray on stage. With regards to the speech, knowing how to speak on a microphone, because it is a skill, knowing how to project, knowing where to put emphasis, and knowing how to captivate an audience. A lot of the speech is not just, okay, I wrote this thing, now I'm going to recite this thing. You need to understand how to impart emotion into what you're saying so that the message actually comes across. And so to some extent, yeah, a lot of that is theater, or at least has overlap with theater. Um, yeah.
You perform, all this makes sense now. And because I mean, you're that's what you did on stage. I mean,
Mhm.
like you commanded the stage and it was almost Shakespearean. Just kind of
Well,
like, I don't
so
know.
long as it was a comedy and not a tragedy, I
It
just
wasn't. I was going to say Hamlet, but that's not the direction I want. But it's
mm,
definitely main character energy.
I'll take it.
You pick your comedy. Let's say you're not bottom. How about that? You're like whoever the king is, a King Thesis or whatever, a Midsummer's Night's Dream. I don't know, whatever. That's the
Oh,
only
I
play I
wish
was
I knew
ever
Shakespeare
in.
more because I'd be able to
Yeah.
like riff with you for a second, but
So when I was a freshman in high school, I did a play and it was Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, and it was
Mhm.
so weird. But I ended up studying Renaissance literature in grad school, so I'm just like very like I'm one of those people that understands that like the evolution of drag, you know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
the top period in acting where there were only male actors, so they had to also play the female. And like people just don't know history, dude, and they
Yeah.
don't understand gender and how to
Mhm.
express gender. And I think that's one of just the continual failures as a human species is gendering things.
Mhm.
And it just creates problems like for trans people and things like that because our interpretations as humans are flawed, you know? And
Yeah.
when you start having flawed people um, uh, put their religion on you or put their politics on you to fit what they think the world should be, that's just not, that's not, we people don't see themselves as flawed. You get what I'm saying? And a
Yeah.
lot of these leaders that we have, they don't see their psyche as something that needs to be challenged. Be like, you know what? This is my perspective. This is my shoes I'm walking in. Maybe this person's shoes might be different. And for some reason, that's empathy, right? And not
Mhm.
all of us have that. You have to have, to me, to be a successful title holder, to be a successful international Mr. Leather, you have to have empathy. You know,
Mhm.
Jamal, amazing. As not just as his run as international Mr. Leather last year, but as a brother. Like during the competition, Jamal checked on me. He
Mhm.
checked on everybody. That it was just such a, when he won, it just felt like such a someone that still we have our group chat, just someone that continually just wants to be present,
Mhm.
and that's amazing. And you have that too. And do you often find, and now that you're in this position, do you feel that maybe sometimes the community might take advantage of you?
So, um, just to kind of touch on the empathy thing really quick. Um, what I think there's a combination of kind of two things I like to keep in mind is the first is empathy is a skill. I genuinely think that it's something that can be learned. Now, for some people, it comes easier than others, but it's something that the more you actively try to practice it, the better you get at it. And um, yeah, and I think that people don't realize that is that being empathic is a decisive choice that you have to make and that you have to practice. Um, and beyond that, I think like all of us have biases that we're not aware of. And the problem is when we get criticized about how we're addressing a situation, especially how we might be addressing a situation pertaining to a group that we don't belong to, we take that as personal attack when we can take that as a learning moment and go, okay, this is a blind spot I didn't know I have. And I think the world would be a better place if we kind of like if collectively we all kind of realize, oh, the all of us are flawed and we need to not take things personally so much as just like, oh, I need to learn more about this. I should not have said it that way. I should not have addressed this group in this way. I shouldn't be talking about this subject in this way, right? And I think that that's something that more people really need to realize, myself included. I have tons of blind spots, and I know it, but I try to be aware of when someone says like, "Hey, that wasn't that cool." It's like, okay, I should take a step and just be like, okay, how do I address this? How do I learn from this?
So let me ask you something to go back a little bit. And I understand that we need to be open to doing better and doing better. And I think what I want to get at is how that information is being brought to you. Is it being brought from
Hmm.
a positive place or a negative place? Because something that I've been addressing a lot lately on these episodes is the calling out culture, like people that don't see the diversity they want on a leather contest. So they get on their keyboards and they're like,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. So, and how those people don't necessarily know that maybe having private conversations, having these conversations to help each other privately so we can do better publicly. And
Right.
I think that sometimes people jump a little bit and it causes conflicts in our community. And so I think maybe what I'm getting from what too is that you have to know the difference when someone is trying to help you or if they're not interested in helping you. Because
Hmm.
there are people that we have this call out culture, don't offer a solution in return. And it sounds to me like people are giving you constructive criticism and not in a way that embarrasses or points out. And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that people that care about us will pull us aside and be like, hey, maybe you want to say this next time. And then when you're in public and you present yourself, you do better.
Yeah.
But so do you feel in your, and just this is a general question, do you
Mhm.
feel that your guidance within the leather community, have you always felt like you can trust, the people that came or gravitated towards you? Have you ever had moments where you didn't really trust the connection that was happening?
Of course. Um, I lean into giving the benefit of the doubt. I am someone that I genuinely always try to keep in mind that most people are fundamentally good and are fundamentally well intentioned. Now, that's not universal. There are some people out there on, each side of whatever argument that are not going to have people's best interests at heart. But I try to lean into a lot more of like, okay, this is coming from a fundamentally good place. And I rarely try to think in terms of absolutes. I try to have the nuanced conversation. Now, where online discussion often falls apart is you have a platform that regulating tone and reading into tone are very difficult.
Yeah.
You have a platform where if you take social media, if you take most Facebook groups, for example, the moment there is heated discourse over whatever the subject is, it ends up boiling down into a shouting match where not a whole lot of stuff gets done and everyone gets pissed off. So I think that there is a place for airing grievances online and a place and a way to go about having these discussions. But a lot of the time, it's a multi-layered conversation that needs to be had more one-on-one. Um, because especially when you have a discussion in a completely open forum, you start getting like the first comment can be like, I don't like tomatoes. And then the second comment can be like, well, you just don't like Italian food. It's like, that's not what I was talking about. But that's the leap that they made.
Yeah.
And then the next person's like, well, you just don't like Italians then. It's like, what? Okay, where did you come from, person C,
Exactly.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so it is a very weird social discourse. And I think that you can have some of these open discourses that are actually very productive. If you look at like some of the social movements I've seen on TikTok, and I can't think of any right now, but I know that there's been some that have actually been very productive and have actually led to actual change. Um, but generally, if you go into most social media, like online discussion groups, um, if there's something that is a nuanced conversation, the nuance gets thrown out the window. And I hate it. I absolutely hate it because even if someone is completely well-intentioned and even if someone's argument is completely valid and sound and emotionally just well-charged, a lot of that gets lost. And I unfortunately don't have a solution, and I wish I did.
I mean, I think these discussions are the solution. At least we're calling the problem out and be like, hey, there's a better way. Because what
Right.
I see, honestly, and what I wake up and feel like I'm working against sometimes is complacency in terms of, okay, I've had mentors and stuff where I'm like, hey, I want to work on the community infighting. And it's been more like,
Mhm.
oh, good luck with that. Like, I'm like, why can't I make an effort to bring people together, which I'm doing?
Yeah.
I'm having these conversations and I'm doing all these events that bring people together. Do I think I can save the world? Hell no. But why can't I try to be a bridge?
And
And
you can make your corner of it a little bit better.
it just,
Um,
it's like, um,
The
I don't want to be discouraged for
yeah.
trying, you know?
One thing that I'm also very, very aware of too is like if we take there are some situations where you have some minority groups, like let's say for example, we'll take the trans community, right? Um, the fight that the trans community is fighting right now with regards to having their rights instated, taken away, all this stuff that's happening right now. That mirrors what the gay community went through in like the late 90s, early 2000s, timeline wise. And but you have people from the trans community that have been saying for a while now, hey, this is an issue. Can we talk about this? And then you have people outside of the trans community that, you have a lot of loud voices that are not being receptive. And as well-intentioned as they may be, the people who are trying to bring light to some of these issues are like, well, I'm starting to lose patience because we've been talking about this. Why is nothing happening? Right. And I think that a lot of it comes down to, yes, please give us patience to catch up and to understand. But at the same time, it's like, okay, if you're one of the people saying this, prove that you are someone worth spending patience on.
Oh, yeah. And there you go.
And I think that there is a middle ground that can be reached here. But if you are not in the position of minority that is being addressed, the, most of the work comes on you to meet them where they are, to at least have that conversation and try to understand.
You know,
Um,
what is well intended? You know, we have to talk about well intentioned and what that looks like, because I think we do have a lot of people that want to help. And, I learned from just simply sharing an event that I worked on in a group for the Texas title holders that I had to leave. But the what was going on is that the event got started getting picked apart rather than,
mhm,
what I'm saying, picked up. And so and I think to some degree it was a mixture of those that are title holders to have the title and those that have good intentions and just want to help. But the issue is not having all the information before we come at somebody about a certain thing.
yeah.
And what we're seeing, just like you said, like on social media, these people will jump in conversations and not know the context of how the conversation even started. So you got people just dropping their opinions of this, and that. And you, again, like you said, you've moved away from what the initial intention was
Mhm,
to just invite people and make aware, not to say why it's failing and how it's being marketed. You get
yeah.
me?
No, I get it. Yeah, and I like this is one of those things that I really feel is it comes down to a case by case basis because
Experience, but have you seen with your own eyes on social
mhm,
media contests produced constantly challenged based on someone that's either problematic or that the visibility that they want is not being seen in that. So who's ever
yeah,
producing the contest either has to take this backlash, even though behind the scenes they've worked their butts off to try to get the
mhm,
event going. And then they have to determine, well, I'm going to have to address this issue. And again, well intentioned, and your intentions, your good intentions are put out there, and we have this culture. I mean, look at it. We were leaning towards wanting to be villains on television for entertainment, and we
mhm,
celebrate that. Like, why can't we go and be heroes on television? Why is
yeah,
that okay? And it just seems that there are certain toxic behaviors that even we're even well of, but I don't see us being like, you know what, today we're going to stop doing this and we're going to make this effort and no more of this. I've talked a lot about two big issues in our community until the day if we really are trying to take things seriously. Segregations with bars, which is a big
mhm,
problem here, especially not being allowed to go work at another venue because you're a certain venue, or venues signing NDA contracts at their bars, and all of this going on. Where does that competition come from? Because that competition bleeds into everything else that's going on with us and how we go about things. Because there's some distrust somewhere
Mhm.
at the core of our fabric where we don't think we can all succeed and have a seat at the table. That's what
Yep.
is an issue. And so then the second one is defamation. The amount of word vomit and inflammatory language, word bombs, as I call them, going overboard because you have been hurt. And so you're hurt. You decide, even if it's just to target one person, that you're going to burn the whole house down. And so
Right.
your hurt now becomes a bigger problem because you are willing to destroy not only the person that you're trying, but the community to get to that person. And I see often in our community that people don't understand that defamation is a crime,
Hmm.
and we are not checking people on how far they can go with how they treat people. And until we can all walk and understand that every queer venue space is in this together to not only make money to financially survive, but to help unify the community. We've got to start calling out people like, hey, dude, look, if you got an issue with someone, you don't have to go to the extent to try to get a business closed down because you had a bad experience. We're going
Yes.
too far. Renee, these are two things, and you hear me saying these, and I'm telling them to you. And I don't know what we can do but this show, Throwing Light, I've decided to go on a local basis, go to different towns, and we have these conversations live locally.
Hmm.
And I want people to hear what I'm saying, and I want other people to be okay to feel that way. Because every time I bring this up to somebody, they're like, yeah, it's that way. And I'm like, yeah, it's that way. Why are we not talking about that? We want to help trans people. Every bar in the community should be behind that. You know what I'm saying? In a way that's cohesive, but yet individual at the same time. Like, okay, we all as a bar owner said we need to have a trans night. Hey, why don't we share that? As a,
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying? Hey, you know what? This bar is going to have their trans night on Wednesdays. This bar is that's you're not only giving all the trans people a safe place to go and feel welcomed, you're sharing that pool of business, you know? Um, Mr. Palm Springs Leather,
Hmm.
that was not a bar title, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's so that one's put on during our Palm Springs Leather Pride weekend, and it's put on by Palm Springs Leather Order of the Desert.
Mm. Have you noticed a difference in between bar titles and those that are not bar titles? Do you think they're produced differently, held differently, or the expectations and the focuses?
I think it does. I definitely think there's a difference because um, if we look at what I would refer to as a business title versus a community title, so a community title tends to be more about fellowship, community, and being a good ambassador for the community that you're representing. It tends to be a lot more um, generally about care for the community in general. Whereas a bar title or a business title, depending on the business title, because that will vary from title to title. Um, a lot of the time we're seeing bars where instead of a contest, they will appoint someone. Um,
Oh,
or yeah, and which is fully within their right because the bar owns the title. They want to make sure that the person that has the title reflects their values as a business. But a lot of the time, a business title or a bar title will be more about the face of the bar and bringing people into the bar themselves, right? It's like, oh, this, sexy pinup guy represents what we want to portray as a business. So that all ends up being tied into the business as opposed to the community a lot of the time.
yeah.
Now that's not universally true, but I definitely find that a lot of bar titles that ends up being kind of the vibe. Um, Now there have been some exceptions. Like I remember a couple of years ago, um, uh, we had a local title holder. His name was Rodrigo. He was Mr. Rough, Rough Trade Leather, Rough Trade Gear Leather. Anyway, he was the title holder for Rough Trade that year. And remember he ended up having a bar night where it was him and the other Palm Springs title holders all doing one big event together. And that took place at the barracks, and it was a big communal effort, and they actually all worked together. Unfortunately, that's not always the norm. You end up with, because of what you were talking about before, about like a lot of businesses kind of like looking out for themselves first, that sometimes spills off into the title. And I don't necessarily think that that's a really healthy thing. I think, in my opinion, if you have multiple business titles that are all under the one umbrella of the community title, so for example, here in Palm Springs, we've got Mr. Palm Springs Leather, and then we've got all the businesses that can put forward a title holder if they choose. Um, I think that that should be a cohesive effort to all benefit the community to some degree. I think it would be really cool to have like the title holder from one bar go and support the other bars wearing the sash or vest or whatever, and vice versa. So like here in Palm Springs, if there's like a Mr. Dick's Leather, having them go to Hunters, having them go to the tool shed, that kind of thing. And I think that visually at least would be a good representation of the businesses and the venues trying to work together.
You nailed the word visually, and I've been telling people it's just like how entertainment is. Say when we watch movies, we have black people, we have Hispanic people, we have queer people, we have movies for everybody that you can be the protagonist, and it gives us the visual thing that diversity and inclusion are okay. And I'm like, and that's what we try to. I think a lot of people approach a lot of these leather contests is that they want a panel that's visually appeasing to the community, right? And everyone looks at and feels that they're a part of. And I think just that's how we get comfortable and that's how we learn to accept things is visibility. And if we start seeing that people of color and people that aren't, can live together in the art of filmmaking, the art of presentation, then we can do that. And I think that's a great kind of word to talk about, or optics. And we get caught up in optics a lot. And
Mhm.
but when optics are done right, they're done right. And I don't know how to explain that to everybody, but you know when you're looking at something, you're like, oh, okay, like
Like
it's for
you've,
everybody.
especially in the last few years, I mean, some stuff like DEI has been a really hot topic and all this kind of stuff. And the question of like, why does visibility matter? That comes up with some regularity. And ultimately it comes down to, well, everyone deserves to have a visual reminder that their dreams are valid. And so having situations where, yeah, a black guy won Mr. Palm Springs Leather, or a Hispanic person won IML, or a trans guy won this bar title, whatever the situation. A lot of that, the importance and the significance behind that is, yeah, we all deserve seeing our dreams realized, and we all deserve seeing that the acceptance is real.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think that you were nailing. I look. I'm gonna tell you straight up. I'm gonna start championing your idea of other title holders going to different bit. Like you, that is called being a solution in the community. You create a solution. And I need more of this. I need our community to be doing this because that little bit of work you're talking about can change our community for decades because of that. And I'm gonna kind of bring this and use this reference because things have been going on. People being concerned about healthcare, HIV, all of that, AIDS, and everything. And so when I was a kid growing up, and you might there's a show called The Real World.
Mhm.
And in the third season, it was in San Francisco, and they had Pedro Zamora on there who was living with AIDS. And that depiction of MTV making such a powerful decision to showcase that to the world,
Mhm.
I didn't know that had transformed that had affected me as a kid until I became an adult and
Mhm.
realized how seeing that made me less afraid. And it made me want to ask questions. But in that show as a kid, something had been embedded in my head that to love no matter what. Like if I ever had a relationship with someone and they were positive or whatever, that wouldn't stop me loving them. And the 90s had some things going on, especially in those earlier to mid years. They
Yeah.
were the queer community was doing some things. We were popping up in places. We were moving past the 80s.
Mhm.
And it seemed like there was progression. And then when the 2000s hit, we backtracked. Obviously, we had Bush Jr. In office, and now we're backtracking in ways that are not just affecting us as a community. I mean, it affects all of us because they're wild and crazy. And
We're seeing decades of work being undone right now.
it's
And that's not hyperbolic. Like,
as
it's
someone I feel exhausted for
Mhm.
the that have had this fight for decades. Like I am, as a representative, as a member, I am embarrassed. I
Mhm.
am frightened. I am concerned. But I hate looking at that hurt in the eyes of our elders, or that, oh no, we got to do this again. And I'm old now. I don't have the fight like I used to have in me.
So it comes down to us.
Exactly. And
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 if
and 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 I think it's building bridges with our elders. And I think it's just very smart right now for our community as a whole to just like hold uplift our elders, help them guide us and fix this. You know what I'm saying? We still have them here. They just can't do this fight. Like they did this. They did it well. They did it the best they could. We can do better. And we have a lot of internal things that have to be addressed to be strong. But if at least we're aware of it, we can do this. But it like this is going to take reinventing the wheel, and I'm going to keep saying this. We have to think of new strategies, and I think doing something simple is sending a representative of one bar to another bar to just show like, hey, we're in this together and it's peace. And I really love that idea. All right, Rene, we're getting close to the end here. So, like last year when I did the show, I always ask this question, and I sometimes ask this question out, just depending on what I ask this to you. But Rene, is there any aspect of our community that you feel that we are not shedding enough light on?
aspect of the community that I feel we're not sharing. So during interview for IML, I was asked a question that related to connecting with the community and then actually paying attention to each other and how I feel like I can bring that to the table. And I remember I just kind of like took a step and I went, well, I actually paid attention to Sesame Street growing up. Um, and
Ain't nothing wrong with
ultimately, what I think my like I hesitate to call it a platform because like to me it feels a little bit superficial, but I mean I can't think of what else to call it. Essentially my platform since stepping up as IML and what my speech is about and all that is just, practice the empathy. Practice actually having the nuanced conversation. Practice getting to know your own biases so you know where your blind spots are. Practice meeting people where they are. And I don't blame people for being in a state of panic right now because of everything that's happening. And it's easy to lash out when your temper is up here, when your anxiety is up here. But I would like to encourage as many people as possible to just like really take a step and like really practice that empathy. really try to see each other where the other person is and try to meet them halfway, whatever that halfway point might be. Now, like I said earlier, if you're someone with more privilege, your path to meeting halfway is going to be a little bit further. Um, and you probably have biases that you don't even realize are there that you're totally blind to.
Yeah.
But if I was to say it's like where would I like to see more light shed on as a community? Yeah, listen to each other because none of us can do this alone.
I think that's fantastic, Ray. This has been a great discussion. Thank you so much for being on
Thank
the
you for having me.
show. I'm gonna ask you one last thing before we close the show out. So,
Hmm?
you've got I'm sure, a full schedule ahead of you. Are you excited about traveling to any specific places as an international Mr. Leather this upcoming year?
Um, I just kind of set my I just finally put my schedule together down on paper for the rest of 2025. Um, it's I'm looking for I'm just looking forward to traveling as IML, period, if that makes sense. Like I got to do San Francisco Pride last month, which was amazing. I'm gonna get to do my first Folsom. I've never done Folsom before, and my first Folsom is gonna be as IML, so that's obviously going to be a run-of-the-mill average experience.
Yeah, you're gonna have a great time.
But I mean that's gonna be great. Any event where I get to hang out with boot blacks, I'm really looking forward to. Like the next event that I'm traveling for is I'm going to Portland as part of their leather weekend. I'm going to be boot blacking at an event called Boots and Buzz Cuts, which just sounds a lot of fun. Um, yeah, International Community Boot Black is coming back, and I'm gonna be there for that. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to traveling and seeing where I might be able to do some positive change, but at a more like kind of selfish perspective. Like, I want to go hang out with other boot blacks. I'm looking forward to that. That'll be fun.
Is what you're that representation is needed. You know how excited people are that a boot black is international Mr. Leather. So like,
It's been kind of cool and intentionally being seen working the boot black stand wearing the IML sash has been really important to me. And boot blacking for other boot blacks. It's
humbleness. You're very
I've
humble.
I've made it a point if I'm at an event where there's a boot black working, I want to see if they're open to sitting for me. I want to take care of them.
It's beautiful. I love that. I love that. What a great way to end. All right. Well, there's one thing you have to do, Renee, before I let you go.
What's that?
I have to get you to close the show.
Hmm.
So when I count to three, you're going to say, if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right.
Okay.
Are you ready?
As I'll ever be.
One, two, three.
If you're not throwing light, you're not acting right.
There we go. Double love over here. All right, Renee, thank you so much for being on the show. I am excited to watch what you do. We're all thrilled at your energy and your passion and your heart. I hope that we get to run into each other. I'm sure we will because I'm gonna be a busy bee. But just know that what I know, there are so many people that obviously are supporting you, and there's so many people that look up to you and think that you're very deserving of where you are right now. And so I just hope that positivity, I hope love, I hope uplift, I hope you get to achieve dreams, I hope you get to inspire those to do their best. So, with that, thank you so much for your service to the
Thank
community.
you.
Okay. And that's going to be our show. So, y'all, this is LTJ out, and we'll see you next week. Bye.